pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We're going to adopt the agenda. Are there any items that you wish pulled from the agenda? Any of the board members?
No, ma'am.
Members of the public?
The first and the second.
Okay.
So move.
Second. First by Director Veerkamp, seconded by Director Osborne. Dan?
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. This is public comment period on the adoption of today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Please find it. There it is.
Director Osborne? Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. We'll move on to the communications part of it for the general manager.
Good morning. I have one I'd like to share today. The district received a call from Lady Sandra Ferguson, an EID customer who complimented Devin Turman, a district construction and maintenance worker, stating he was very, very helpful, super nice, had great customer service, and he's a very good employee. So this is, again, just another example that if our customers follow the guiding principles of providing excellent service, we get that type of feedback. So great job, Devin. That concludes it.
Yeah, we love receiving those things, those written recommendations of our employees. We're very proud of our employees. So thank you for submitting those good things we like to hear. All right, we'll move to public comment.
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. And because we do have members of the public participating remotely today, I'm just going to really go quickly. If you're participating from your phone, you press *9 to raise your hand. And once you raise your hand and I allow you to speak, you press *6 to mute and unmute. If you would like, you can hover to the bottom of your screen and click that raise hand button, and at that time I'll call on you and you'll be allowed to speak. This is a public comment period for any items not on today's agenda. President Zini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak.
Very good. Thank you very much. We'll move on to communications. General Manager.
None today, thank you.
All right, Clerk of the Board.
None today, thank you.
Board of Directors, Director Veerkamp.
Yes, from LAFCO, you may have read the press release in the Democrat that Sheba Frenzen has been selected as the new LAFCO Executive Director with a contract been negotiated and approved. And second, George, about the third time around, we're going to have a fire summit talking about what to do with the fire service in all the districts in the future. So
When's that going to be?
it's being formulated now. So
I'll be in attendance.
there you go. Yeah, this will be my third rodeo. How about yours?
Yeah.
This is county-wide.
Yes, yeah. There'll be 2 summits. One will be on the west slope and one will be on the east slope.
We don't know the exact date.
No, not yet. North Lake Tahoe and Meeks Bay are in the midst of consolidation, so that really
Oh,
takes care of that one issue, but there's still 3 in it.
okay. Any other? Yes, Director Day.
Yes, it's time for the annual preliminary acorn report. And initially not looking good at all, dropping a lot of immature and unproductive acorns. Part of it might be due to the extreme heat, 110 degrees that we had. There are signs of hope, though, just in the last week of viable acorns being dropped. So I'll keep you posted.
Well, the squirrel index,
It was-
they ran out of cones.
Yes, I've seen a lot of them on the roadside. Okay. Director Dwyer, anything? Okay.
This is scientific stuff.
I'm glad that our audience is finding this joyful. All right. We'll move on to approve the consent calendar. It-
Second?
All right. It's been motioned by Director Osborne, seconded by Director Veerkamp to approve the consent calendar as is.
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. This is public comment period for the approval of today's consent calendar. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the approval of today's consent calendar, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Veerkamp. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Yes.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we'll move on to the workshop item. This is with Mr. Mueller.
Okay, I think we're getting close. So good morning, President Anzini, members of the board, and members of the public. I'm Brian Mueller. I'm the Director of Engineering. And this is the kickoff of our annual budgeting process that we go through each year. I cover the capital improvement plan today in a workshop format. It covers the next 5 years, so we do an annual update of a 5-year plan. And then just to look ahead a little bit, I believe at the next meeting, tentatively, we'll be coming back with adoption of the CIP, as well as the financial plan and budget workshop. So I think that's what I just covered on the summary. So we'll just go, usually with these, we'll talk about the next 5-year projects, but I always like to look back at the previous year and see some of our successes. As far as expenditures, in 2022, we had planned about $55 million of total expenditures over the last year in the plan. Our actual expenditures are projected to be about $48 million, or about 87% of that plan, which is right around the target of what we like to see as far as, expending what we say we're going to expend in the plan.
Brian, how much of that was unanticipated because of the Caldor fire?
Yeah, I was going to cover that. There was about, I believe it was around 20 million or so of Caldor fire, although some of that was Flume 30, which we had planned
Right.
for. So Flume 4, 5, and 6 was maybe, around 15 million. I can't remember the exact numbers.
Right.
Next slide. So this is a list of some of the completed projects, and I won't go through all the details of these. Elizabeth Dawson has been to the board previously with status of a lot of these projects. But as far as some of the big ones, the Folsom Lake intake replacement was completed, the main ditch pipeline, and then we also had, we mentioned the Flume 30 and Flume 4, 5, and 6 replacement due to the Caldor fire. We also have wastewater collection system pipeline rehab projects completed, some of our battery storage projects at our water and wastewater facilities, and other. This is just a short list of some of them, and then we've got a lot of different projects in the pipeline or completed this last year. Next slide. This is just some of the pictures of the Folsom Lake intake replacement. This is about a $42 million project. Started in 2020 and completed in 2022. So this project really improves the reliability, replaces 1950s, 1960s era pumping facilities that have been in place since then. So really improves the reliability of our water delivery system, taking our supplies out of Folsom Lake. Next slide. On the upper end of our system, the upper main ditch pipeline replaced our previous open conveyance. Really is going to help with improved water loss and improved source water quality to one of our treatment plants in Pollock Pines. Next slide. And again, the flumes 4, 5, 6, and 30 replacement, about $27 million was expended there for those 4 flume replacement projects. Some of the projects that are under construction right now that the board has approved includes the Flume 45 abutment section replacement. This is a small section of our overall Flume 45 system, and I'll talk a little bit more about future projects in the Flume replacement program. We've also got a little bit of work to stabilize some of the burn slopes resulting from the fire along the El Dorado Canal. We're in the process of upgrading our crew room up at Camp 5. We're also going through a PLC, programmable logic controller replacement at our Reservoir A water treatment plant. The collections facility relocation is well underway and hopefully will be completed by the end of the year, as well as the headquarters battery storage and backup generator project, which is right here at headquarters. Next slide. And just going through some pictures and the cost of the Flume 45 abutment section under construction now is about $3.7 million. That'll replace that old section in the middle there, and also have improvements to these old rock wall abutments that are unstable. Slide. This is a fairly recent picture. I know that's been some more progress since these pictures were taken of our collections facility relocation project down at the El Dorado Hills wastewater treatment plant. And then this is the picture of our battery storage here at headquarters in the adjacent parking area. Again, we've got a long list of other ongoing projects. Again, not to go into all the details here, but several projects in water line and service line replacement. We're doing some condition assessments of our water treatment facilities, and then we'll be moving into condition assessments of our transmission facilities next. You've heard about the permit 21112 change petition, adding a pointed diversion up at Kybers, as well as maintaining our Folsom diversion. And then also that will allow us to add a place of use of storage at Jenkinson Lake to be able to use that in other parts of our system. We're in the process of updating our water master plan. Also in the process of designing the Sly Park intertie replacement. So that'll be a large project in our next 5-year plan. Moving into the flumes, again, Flume 45 Section 3 is under design, as well as Flume 48. You heard about the Silver Lake Dam replacement, I believe, at the last board meeting, as well as we've got some penstock improvements that's following up on some condition assessment we did on the penstock facilities several years ago. We've got water line replacement projects in the works. In 2023, we should have some construction projects to help reduce some of our losses and failing water lines in our system. These are mainly up in Pollock Pines area. The mudload force main replacement is also a project in design and scheduled for construction in 2023. And then we've got ongoing vehicle replacement program and our Hanson upgrade. So those are some of the ongoing projects. And then now moving into the 2023 to 2027 timeframe for the CIP and what we prepared. Next slide. So each summer our staff begins this process. And it really starts with a lot of meetings and our engineers and project managers in both engineering and operations working on updating the status of all of our projects, plugging those projects into updated worksheets and developing new funding estimates. And then, we meet with each group and then we, kind of kick around all these projects, what needs to be done now, what can be pushed off a little bit. The initial draft that we always see always starts with a higher number, and then that's what those meetings are for, is to work to try to reduce that to a more realistic, what we can do as far as staff workload, as well as within our financial constraints. So this year, the initial draft totaled about $270 million. After it was, after our staff was done with working through that, it was reduced to about $230 million, which is what you see before you today. Next slide. And just a reminder, we always have this, we have a prioritization system that's included with this process as well. We've got three levels of priorities. Priority ones are really addressing health and safety type of issues with some of our projects, or it could be a regulatory mandate, like the Silver Lake Dam replacement, or even projects that are already under construction. We put that into a priority one bucket. Priority two, which is the vast majority of our projects, are priority two. These are just replacement of aging assets for reliability. Some of these may increase revenue, or could be a project that addresses increased growth within our system. And then priority three are projects that really would improve the efficiency of what we're doing or improve the level of service to our customers. And just looking at where we're at right now with all the priorities, really 95% of the spending in that 5-year plan is a priority one or priority two project. Next slide. And then just a look at the CIP dollars compared with the last couple years. We are showing a little bit of a reduction over the 5-year plan of about $230 million over the next 5 years, compared with the plan that was adopted by the board last year of about $238 million. So you can see in 2023, we're anticipating about $50 million of expenditures, a little bit of a bump to 57 and 56 million for the next 2 years, and then dropping down to 31 to 37 million over the 26 and 27. Although note with that, we don't have the Silver Lake Dam replacement construction dollars in there, so that's likely to increase as we get more resolution on what those costs are in the time frame for that. I mentioned before, but the actual expenditures are typically about 70 to 90% of what we plan. So going with the 231 million, that would mean the actual expenditures over that 5-year period would be more like 162 to 208 million over that 5-year period. Just a graph that shows some of our historical and projected expenditures. This is adjusted for for the construction cost index, and just try to equate that to today's costs. And just the take home from here is that our expenditures over the last 15 years are pretty much in line with what we plan to expend over the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think I like this chart. And if we can, going forward, if we can keep the early years on, because I think it helps put us in perspective of, there was a tremendous amount of building in the 2000s, I guess we call them. Mm-hmm. And then we went through a lean period, although I like that. I remember those $98 million CIPs and stuff. But if we can try to, one of my wishes or goals all along has been to even it out, to try to, obviously you can't be perfect on that, but for planning purposes, for managing assets and people, trying to keep it in a reasonable range. And I think I think we're working towards that, so that's good.
Good, yeah, thank you. Yeah, back in 2008 and 2009, I was looking at this. I believe most of that was we went through a really large and expensive wastewater plant, both expansion and regulatory improvement process. And then in these recent years of 2020, 21, that's the Folsom Lake intake, main ditch, 4B dam. So it's hard to balance out and make that all level, but because there is going to be some big projects hitting at certain times. But yeah, that's a good point. We try to maintain that average expenditure.
Brian, I might have a little different observation of the impact of that chart. And to me, that says that in the dip there, the board was reluctant to approve a lot of projects. And so that created the hump the hill that we are now climbing out of and doing well, I think. So the lesson, I think, is to do just what Alan said, is to try to stabilize that. You know, we spend $40 to $50 million a year on capital projects. If we could keep that, and we have projects, as you're listed here, that go on well into the future. So if we could plan and budget for that level of activity, instead of having these big roller coaster ups and downs, I think that would be good. And then, you know, the financial part of this is that the amount of debt is important, but the more important number is the debt service. What does it really take to pay for this 300 million, 200, and that's the direct impact on the ratepayers. It's not the amount of the debt. It's kind of like I was saying in private, you know, like buying a car. They don't ask you how much you can afford to borrow. They say, and how much can you afford in your monthly payments? And it's kind of the same thing here. How much can we afford in our debt service within the rate structure to still support the projects that need to be done?
I'd like to add to that. It's kind of interesting that people need to realize that deferred maintenance is very typical in school districts because they're only allowed to have a certain amount of money per student. So it goes up and down. But this is a little bit different. This is a infrastructure situation where our water has to be delivered as cleanly and safely as possible. But in order to do that, you have to bump up the infrastructure and make it safe. If you defer your infrastructure, you defer the service to your customers. And for instance, I'm having my house painted. They had to rip off a side of the house, and it is completely rotted in there because the previous owner, I've been in there 8 years, but the previous owner had not repaired it, and it was cleared for purchase. So, you know, that's my debt service. Now I have to increase my capital project. And it's no different than the ratepayers having to do that. And it's really, really important to stay top of the line, making sure that it's clean and healthy for our customers. So it's the deferred maintenance is always the hard part. And if you defer things, you're kicking the can down the road. So, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, just a little bit to put the chart into context is at the beginning, 2008, 2009, those were the go-go days of the housing boom. And EID was not alone. A lot of public entities made their plans based off of that, thinking that was going to last a long time.
That's the bubble.
And it doesn't. It never does in California. It's boom and bust. That's kind of the way we are. And then that's also the trough there is a bit of a reflection of the economic times in the Great Recession there. So it's a combination of it was also not just the board, but management being cautious with some of their spending as well. So just to put it in a little perspective.
Very good.
Next slide. All right, wooden flumes. So this is it's a pretty good slide because I see the number of our wooden flumes are dwindling back from my previous years here. So that's the good part. But we still have many wooden flumes in our system. We've been going through efforts the last few years to try to prioritize these based on the year that they were replaced and the condition. And so you can see that here that in this table, the condition score, a high number is bad. So we've got several condition scores of 9s you can see there and some 8s. And so in this 5-year plan, we're really trying to take a big dent out of those projects. I mentioned Flume 45 abutment section, the one at the top, that one is a condition score of 9. That's under construction right now this fall. In 24 and 25, we've got section 3 of Flume 45 slated for replacement. And then we've got some smaller sections, 45A and 47A, that we've got fairly well designed, and we're just plugging those in kind of in the off years. And then 48, Flume 48 is a pretty substantial one that we've got also plugged in at the in about 2027. Also of note, just down at the bottom, we've got Flume 46, and you see it says feasibility there. So that one that I believe we've mentioned in past presentations, that's our longest flume. It's in pretty good shape. It was last replaced in 1990, so it wouldn't be a candidate to replace based on condition right now. But you know, coming off the Caldor fire, if we did experience another fire in that, and we lost that flume there, that would be a substantial impact, much longer outage than we experienced this last year to try to replace that. So we've got some money plugged in to look at that flume and some replacement options, at least get that plan ready, you know, in case that happens, and to be able to pull the trigger on a complete replacement. We will be looking at not only replacing, you know, in kind like we do with concrete, but that could be also a candidate based on topography to install like an inverted siphon to just bypass that whole section as well. So we'd like to look at that here in this next year. We're also, and I've got a slide a little bit on grant funding, but we're also researching and applying for a lot of different areas of grant funds for some of these flume replacements as well. Next slide. Just going through a few pictures here. So this is some pictures that you've seen before, Flume 45, Section 3. We've got about $12 million slated in those years of 2024 to 2025 to address that. Next slide. This is the Flume 46 replacement. Next slide. I haven't mentioned Slide Park Intertie much yet, but that, again, is under design. This will be, I believe the construction cost is about $30 million. We do have about a $10 to $11 million grant funding for that project as well. So in the CIP, as far as expenditures, it's identified at about $21 million. But this one will replace, it's about a 3-mile long existing pipeline that was built in the 70s. It's no longer functional, so this would be a complete replacement with a new 24-inch pipeline. Really gives us operational flexibility between our two major sources of water supplies up in Pollock Pines, between Jenkinson Lake and our 4-bay supply. So this one is slated for construction in 2024. We've got several water treatment plant improvements that are not really identified or, you know, defined as specific projects yet, but I mentioned we've been going through condition assessments of our treatment plants, specifically focused on Res 1 and El Dorado Hills water treatment plants, because I think that's where a lot of our future expenditures are going to need to come as far as replacing some of those assets. So we've got about $12 million identified right now in the 5-year plan. A lot of that is not real solid as far as what projects would be funded out of that, and that number could definitely be increased. We just need about another year to go through that process to identify those projects, the timing and the cost, to then plug that into the CIP. Then moving forward with water line replacements, I mentioned that we've got about $21 million over the next 5 years for replacing water lines. At the top of the list is we've got a water line in 4-Bay Road that's a real leaker that's really actually impacting our 14-mile tunnel, the tunnel that goes under 4-Bay Road into 4-Bay Reservoir, as well as drop-off road, which is nearby. Also a pipeline in Slide Park Hills that feeds a tank up in Slide Park Hills. So those are the 3 main water line replacement projects, but we also got about $5 million beyond those projects that are planned annually between 2025 to 2027. We've got our ongoing service line replacement program, about 26 million, just continuing to plug away at replacing our service lines, about 5 million annually. I mentioned the Silver Lake Dam replacement, about 3 million that is slated right now in the 5-year plan. This is for the design, environmental, and permitting aspects of it. Hopefully by next spring, we'll have about a 30% design completed that'll include a construction cost estimate at that time. So this time next year, and as we go through the CIP process, we'll have those construction dollars and have a better sense of the timing of that.
Can you give us a ballpark? I mean, just,
I know, we tried this last time, I know.
well, with our experience on Forbay, you'd think that'd be kind of a benchmark, so I'm guessing 40 to 50 million. Is that?
I hope it's not that much. I'd like to, I think it's gonna be cheaper than that, but I don't know. It's gonna
I've got
be,
the recorder on, so.
like if you're comparing with Forbay, all we're talking about is concrete. And it's probably gonna be like a 1-year project. We've gotta, as soon as it's open, snow melts up there, we gotta get in there, get it torn out, replaced, and then get it online before this next winter. So it's not gonna be a long, 3-year project like Forbay was. So I'm hoping it would come in lower than that, but.
Okay, we won't hold you to it. We'll wait till we get the actual and. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Disappearing ink there, yeah.
No, but the YouTube tells everything.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see, moving on to the wastewater side. So wastewater lift station upgrades, we've got about $10 million planned for our wastewater lift station. These are the pump stations that pump water over the hills and get it to our wastewater treatment plants. 3 specific projects: Indian Creek Lift Station off of Missouri Flat Road, one lift station, and one of our largest lift stations in El Dorado Hills, the St. Andrews Lift Station, and then a small lift station, Rancho Ponderosa, which is in the Shingle Springs area. And we've also, besides the improvements to the lift station, we also got other communication upgrades and some smaller improvements to those lift stations to keep those running as well. On pipeline replacement for the wastewater system, the larger one is going to be the Motherwood Force Main replacement. We've got that again under design and scheduled for construction in 2023. I believe we have about 15 million estimated in 2023 for that project. The Sterling Hills sewer line is a downstream component of that whole Force Main system that is also in the 5-year plan. And then Liz will actually have a project today for replacing some of the gravity lines or improving that with slip lining type of projects or small replacements of our overall collection system gravity pipelines as well. And then finally, general district projects. These are not specific to either water or wastewater, just more of a general project that includes our Hanson 7 software replacement. We're in year 2 of a 3-year program for that replacement. Our vehicle replacement program, about $8 million over the next 5 years. Various improvements to our IT systems, about $4 million. Again, improvements to both our SCADA system, communication system between our facilities, as well as any safety or security improvements related, about $2 million. And then we've got also facility improvements identified at the existing headquarters building. This would be like, I believe the roof needs to be replaced, or the air conditioning unit. This building's getting fairly old, and it's due for some replacements of some of these facilities as well. So that just covers most of the projects, and then we get into the financing and how we're going to pay for all these projects. And like we do each year, we try to identify some of these larger projects that would fit a future bond issuance. In the last financial plan that was adopted, we identified a future bond issuance of about $100 million. That was forecasted to be in 2025. We think and we'll get into this in the next meeting as we go through the budget and the updated financial plan, that this may be, need to accelerate into 2024. But that, we'll have more info on that at the next meeting. The $100 million the projects would likely be the Slide Park intertie, flume replacement, those water treatment plant improvements that I mentioned, and possibly also the Silver Lake Dam replacement as well, if we can get that ready for construction within that time frame.
Hey, Brian, just on, to Director Dwyer's point about debt service, the 100 million a couple years ago with interest rates then versus what interest rates are now, we don't know what they'd be next year or in 2024, but probably higher. I think that's going to be something we're going to have to talk about, and a grave concern of it, we may not, the impact of 100 million at 5% versus when it was 2% or something like that. So just kind of, I think we need to be aware of that, especially for next year.
Certainly, before we go through and recommend issuing $100 million worth of bonds, we have to do a cost of service study update to determine what the rates would be. And I don't like going to bond like maybe some of the past general managers did. I'd like to go to bond with an approved financial plan and rates adopted by the board. So it just works better with our bond rating folks as well. So yeah, the whole package.
Well, the evidence of that is what happened when we did the refinance, and the savings we realized from that was great. Thank you, Financial Department, for doing that, and Board. And so that did give us a little bit of headroom. And it would seem to me that as we retire some of the previous bonds, then we bring the new bond issue on board, and again, to keep solid state, steady state, instead of getting all these ups and downs. So that's a real important component, I think, of the capital improvement plan, is yes, we believe all these projects are essential, all category 1 and 2. We need to do these things, but we need to do them cautiously and smartly, and with full disclosure about how much it's going to cost, and most important, how much it's going to impact the rates.
Oh, Director Osborne.
I'm curious about the FERC projects. When we entered into an agreement with all the entities that are listed in that agreement for our license for 40 years we got, it was guesstimated that we would spend about $10 million on FERC projects. I think we're way past that. Could you just, the next time you come back, would you give us a little update on where we are with that? Because I think we're closer to 40 million the way we've been looking at the things. But we were told that it would be about 10 million when we did this. So anyway, just more curiosity than anything. And I'm going to go back to years ago. This is a plan, nothing more than a plan. And not too many years ago, everything was done by ad hoc. You know, oops, it's blowing up, we got to fix it. And this is a much better plan, fixing it in a planned, orderly fashion in deference to emergencies is much cheaper for the ratepayers and much more efficient. So I'll get off my soapbox.
Okay, thanks. And then just more on the financing. So I mentioned that as far as the expenditures, we likely see about 160 to 200 million of expenditures. Again, we talked about the bond funded projects. We also identify annual revenue that we generate to pay for some of these projects on a pay-as-you-go basis. And then the third component is FCC revenue. So we'll have that all wrapped up as far as those estimates over the next 5 years. I also mentioned grants. So we've been really successful with some grants in recent years. I mentioned the Slide Park intertie. almost $11 million has been secured for both design and construction of that project, both through the American Rescue Plan Act. We've got some funding for design through the El Dorado County process. And then we were successful with a $10 million grant from the Department of Water Resources Drought and Multi-Benefit Program. Other ones, we've been successful with securing some money for standby generators through the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Program. And then as far as looking forward, we've got some applications in the process for flume replacement through the Cal OES and FEMA. They have two programs, the Hazard Mitigation Program and then what they call BRIC program, which is Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. So we've got 3 flume projects that we've applied for and hope to get some grant funds to replace those wooden flumes with concrete and resistant to fire. And then we mentioned Silver Lake Dam, I think last meeting, as far as potential grant funding opportunities. We'll be looking at that really hard in the next couple of years to hopefully identify some either federal funding or maybe even some low interest loans that we might be able to take advantage of to help finance that. So that is it. The next steps, we'll possibly make some further revisions based on any board or public input that we get, incorporate the CIP into the operating budget and the financial forecasts, and we'll be reviewing that at the next meeting, as well as, along with the budget workshop, bringing back the CIP for formal board adoption. Well, thank you for that. Any questions or comments?
Yes, Director Veerkamp.
Hey, Brian, Diamond Springs Parkway, I know that's finally going to get done, the second phase. Is there anything over there that we need to be concerned about? We'd talked a couple of years ago about stub outs or sleeves or something, so that in case there was any service to the north of it, we may need, put it in once instead of dig it up again once it's done.
Are you talking about the connector between 49 and
Yes,
Missouri Flat? I think that's been planned for, but I'll definitely make sure to check that. I know we don't have a plan to put the whole pipeline all the way across. I think we discussed that, but
Okay,
yeah,
well,
it would be good to have
Something to
some
at least
provisions in
maybe
case.
be thinking about, because we, I'd hate to go back in and dig that all up
Yeah.
if there were expansion. And in downtown El Dorado, there was a stormwater project that was at least being discussed. And I don't know, I know we've got a main that goes down through there as well that I think has failed in front of poor Reds.
Yeah.
Just as long as that's on the radar screen too. If the county moves ahead with that project, it might be a good time to do it all at once or something.
Very good, yeah. Yeah, we do. We're trying to get some coordination meetings with DOT just to talk about those type of projects, and we've had those in the past, and we'd like to keep going
Right,
with
and then the
those.
final thing I had was the Lake Aloha trout removal. Can't we just get Osborne and his buddies up there to?
Catch the fish.
Yeah, that'd be a wipeout.
I'm going to have to come up with a project to make you guys embarrassed, so. Yes, Director Dwyer.
Right, and Jim, I do have one question, I guess, maybe concern, is the hydro projects. We have, for next year, almost 7 million, the following year, 9 million, the next year, 11 million, and hydro's only generating, what, $3 to $4 million a year in revenue. It doesn't look like we're getting a good ROI on those projects, and negative by 3 times. Is there a way that we could or should defer some of the major upgrades and, you're gonna hate me for that, patch it together for the next several years until we get a better negotiation on the power sales?
I'll start with that. Those are flumes. And the hydro project, even though we separated, it's a water project with ancillary power generation benefits. And I don't see the energy market on hydro being super lucrative over the next 10 years, especially since we just finished that contract. If we didn't even have hydro there, we didn't have a hydro plant there, the ratepayers would have to pay 100% of the flume replacement. So we really use whatever hydro revenues we have to help subsidize our
Understand.
water customers.
Thank you.
Okay, I was gonna say, why do we have it then listed in hydro, but it's, in essence, then we turn around and put the revenue.
Semantics.
The Water Enterprise Fund is the water system, the hydro system, and rec system. Recreation's part of the water supply system as well. So those three enterprise funds consist of for water. Recycled water and wastewater are lumped together as an enterprise fund.
Any other questions? All right. Any questions from the public?
This is time for any members of the public wishing to speak on workshop item number 8. There's no action taken on this item. It's for board and public input only. President Anzini, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak.
Great. All right, that ends the workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And this will be posted up online, right?
It's already posted online.
It's already there?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, information item regarding finance.
Hello there, good morning. My name is Renee Berrigan. I am the Utility Billing Supervisor here at the district. And I am here today to talk to you about our administrative regulation, 9051.3, concerning bill adjustments and specifically how we handle leak adjustments for customers. Next slide, please. So we've been asked today by Director Day to come and talk about this information item, to give information about this regulation and how we handle those leak adjustments. So we will get into that now. So some background about this regulation. It was established in 2003, so we are coming up on 20 years. It is designed to assist customers who have an unusually high bill due to a leak. The leak must be underground or unexposed, and it also must be repaired in order for the adjustment to be approved. Some differences between what might be a difference between an underground or an unexposed leak. Underground leaks are just that, underground pipes that break, you can't see them, you have to dig down to get to them. An unexposed leak might be something like their pressure regulator, which is located inside their meter box, which is underground, it's unexposed, it's in a covered box. It also might be a drip line that's covered in mulch that isn't, able to see very easily. We've also had customers who've had leaks underneath their house. So although they're not digging under the ground to get to the leak, it is an unexposed, so we will allow that as well.
I mean, how finicky do we get about that? I mean, a common thing that I see for folks is that an irrigation valve will go bad and doesn't shut fully, but it's not fully open either. But you have this constant 24/7 leak that can go on for months. It might be in a box or it might be just covered in insulation. Would that qualify as well?
Typically it would, yes, because it's inside of a box,
Right,
yes.
okay.
Yeah. The process
So I
for.
was going to crack a joke and say, so if you find a leak but it's not in a box, put a box around it.
The process for.
Actually, no, we're not suggesting that. That was a tongue-in-cheek comment, obviously.
Thank you, Jennifer. The process that a customer would follow is they will fill out and submit what's called an adjustment request form. It's a one-page form where we ask them information about what occurred, when they repaired it. We also ask for if they have any receipts. That form gets submitted to our office, and then the billing staff will review the form for eligibility, and we'll follow up with the customer. The frequency on the approved adjustments depends on the service that is billed, and we'll get it more into that in the next slides. And having a limit on the frequency of approved adjustments, we feel encourages timely repairs and maintenance on the customer side, as well as water conservation, so that they're being mindful not to over-irrigate, that they're checking their system regularly, they're doing upgrades that need to be done, insulating pipes to avoid any sort of leaks from occurring.
Do we know, because I think that's 5 years, right? You can apply for this once
For
every-
water adjustments, yes, it's
yeah,
5 years.
once every 5 years.
Yes.
Why we chose that, I had a constituent asking that question, and her concern was, well, you know, the bill was $250 higher because of the leak. But now I'm worried that over the next 5 years, you know, my system's aging. What if next year I get an even bigger one, but then I wouldn't qualify? So I just wonder, I mean, I guess we have to put some sort of limitations on it, but do we know why we picked 5 years? I know it was
Yes.
20 years ago. Well, he remembers.
Well, and I have to admit that being part of this discussion is that, you know, you could have somebody coming in every year asking for an adjustment. And so a lot of my customers in my neck of the woods have off-site meters, and which is very potential for leak problems. And so I admonish them, if you've got a bill that's $100 over normal, pay it, because you might have you've got 5 years, if all of a sudden you've got a bill that's $1,000, you know, but we didn't, the thought process is that there would be some individuals that might come back every year saying, I got a leak, I got a leak, I got a leak. And so that's the rationale behind it.
It's called a frequent flyer.
Yeah.
But I also have a constituent, and the customer service has been working with her, but they're in Serrano. And apparently the outside meter or the watering system had been turned on by the Serrano HOA, and she doesn't know how to check those things. So one of her questions was, how do I know I have a water leak? And my only option was, we do a video, and I'd be willing to be the person to show people how to do it on a basic level, where a lot of these people are single, older people that don't know how to do that. And it's beneficial. I know it would drive our customer service people crazy, but it's beneficial that we can point them, step 1, go and do this, step 2, and I'd be willing to help you, you know. Right, finish the presentation.
Hold that thought,
Yeah.
yes, I've got
Yes.
more to share.
Good, good. Yeah, well,
All right, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so as we discussed before, there are different types of adjustments that we offer. Water and recycled water. We also offer adjustments on residential sewer and commercial sewer. And then I'll go into more detail on the next slides. Next slide, thank you. Okay, so for water and recycled water, the adjustment is for a single billing period. So what that means is if the leak affects multiple bills, billing staff will review the request, they'll review the consumption, they will offer the adjustment on the bill that will give them the highest adjustment. As we talked before, no more than one adjustment is allowed in any 5-year period. The way that we calculate the amount that we will adjust is we look at the difference in the consumption from the bill that shows the leak. We look at the same billing period of the prior time, and we take that difference in consumption. That difference in consumption is calculated at our current billing rates, and then we will offer half of that difference as an adjustment. So we're effectively sharing in the cost of that leak with the customer. Next slide. Okay, residential sewer. A lot of people wonder why a water leak would affect a residential sewer bill. The reason is that we reset a customer's sewer rate every year. It's based on how much water they use during the winter billing period. And that can range depending on what cycle you are in from mid-November to mid-February. So if a customer has a leak during that time period, it will negatively impact the sewer charge. So not only will they maybe need a water leak adjustment, but they may need a sewer adjustment as well.
Do we have on our bills a heads up of that this is your winter bill, your winter sewer measuring period is upcoming?
Yes.
Be aware, so that's on the bills?
Yes, we put that on the bills. We also put it on the front page of our website. We'll a lot of times work with communications. We do social media posts as that winter quarter period is coming up.
Right, because it can vary, because
Yes.
depending upon your billing cycle that you're on,
Correct.
right?
So for the residential sewer, similar to the water, we will approve underground or unexposed leaks, but we also allow for irrigation issues or pool issues. An issue that we may not give a water adjustment for, but if you had to fill your pool during this winter quarter calculation, you may qualify for a sewer adjustment, just not a water adjustment. Also with an irrigation issue, if you had a leak in your irrigation or your irrigation ran during the winter time, you weren't aware of this winter quarter, we may give you a sewer adjustment. You just wouldn't be approved for a water adjustment. The way that we calculate the sewer adjustment is we take the customer's prior year winter quarter average, and we will just reset them back to last year's rate when they didn't have a leak. If they do not have any previous history because it's a new account, we will set them at the district average rate, or we will wait for their first full bill to come out, and we will set them at that amount as long as it's less than the district average. For the actual bill adjustments, we will adjust all bills affected by that higher winter quarter. So it may take a customer a bill or two to realize, hey, why is my sewer high? They might not connect that when they filled their pool in January, it caused this higher charge. So once that is approved, we will go back and adjust those higher bills and then set them to the lower charge going forward. For the residential sewer, we allow no more than one adjustment in every 3-year period. Because they are set once a year and they're stuck with that charge for a whole year, we make that frequency a little bit more than water. So for the commercial sewer, we bill commercial sewer every 2-month bill. It's directly related to how much water they use. Most commercial customers will have a separate landscape meter to subtract that off, but whatever water they use in that bill, they're going to be billed for the sewer on that bill. The way that we calculate for the commercial sewer, again, it's underground or unexposed leaks. We're not worried about pool filling for commercial businesses. We will calculate their adjustment based on last year's water charge. And then we allow no more than one adjustment in any 1-year period for commercial because they have 6 new sewer charges every year. The frequency is higher than a residential, which is only calculated once a year. Next slide. Okay, so next is our customer outreach. Oh, that's okay. No, that's perfect. We actually have a lot of information on the website, so we're going to skip ahead to an example of the website, and then we'll go back to the rest if you want to go to the next slide. Perfect. So we've done a lot of hard work at making our website user-friendly and having a lot of information for customers to either self-serve or for us to point them in that direction. On our maintenance page, we have how to check for a leak, and it goes into how to actually use your water meter to perform a leak detection. We have information specifically on how to check for a toilet leak, how to check for an irrigation leak, how to check for a pool leak, and then just general information again on using that water meter to perform that leak detection. On our maintenance list, there's a lot of other information that they can click on how to read their water meter, how to adjust their pressure, how to turn off their water in the case of an emergency to not lose water. So we do a lot to try to make this as user-friendly as possible so that customers can easily understand and follow these directions. So if we go back to the previous slide, some other information that we do is our waterfront. We put information about our winter quarter average in there. We also participate in it's called Fix a Leak Week that Communications helps put on to encourage customers to check for leaks and how to do that. We perform rereads before billing. So before we bill customers, we review consumption. Anything that's flagged as an unusually high consumption, our meter readers will go out, verify that read. They'll also take a quick look and see as they're reading it, is the meter turning and could there be a leak here? We follow up with that with our customers by sending them possible leak letters, telling them, hey, your consumption's high, your meter was turning, you may have a leak. We also send emails, and sometimes we do phone calls as well, just depending on the severity or what we're finding out there. So we try to take all the information that we have and get that to the customers in a very timely manner. Also, our customer service technicians. I have an amazing staff. They are very well versed in assisting customers. If a customer calls concerned about a high bill or they see water in their yard, the technician will take their time. They will look through historical consumption to see, is this normal? Is it not normal? They will talk to customers about how to check for a leak. If they don't know where the water meter is located, they will give them directions or we'll send staff out to mark the meter. They will follow up, send emails with links to that site that we looked at. And, you know, if they can't find it, it's always, you know, try these steps, then call us back. And we will work with that customer to try to assist them to get to the bottom of what's going on. We also offer, I don't have on here, but free water audits where our water efficiency technicians can come out and do an audit of the property to try to help them save water and be more efficient.
How many of those do we do annually?
I would say, I think we do about 75 to 100 of them.
Okay, hope it'd be more, but maybe we need to pump that up a little bit. Of course, I know they do other things too,
Yes. Yeah.
so.
We typically do a lot in the summer, and then it kind of tapers off in the winter.
What day is water leak? What week is water leak week?
It is in March, I do believe.
Okay,
Yes, I was
thanks.
gonna say
It's there.
Coming. So if we want to skip ahead to,
Okay.
or this was the
Always do.
website.
I think it's kind of like Fleet Week too. We get to go out to the,
Right. And then one more. So these are just some examples. So we talk about fix a leak. Oh, it is. I think it says March.
Yeah, I see
Oh,
it
there it is.
here.
So these are just some examples from our waterfront, from our website. We have an example of a customer side versus an EID side. Again, a visual of how they can do that leak check. Information about the Fix a Leak Week, how to just be water efficient. We have a whole water efficiency section of our website that customers can go to just learn how to be more water efficient in general. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, and Alan was going to ask us this question, so we put this slide up just to make sure we answered that question.
So I think it is helpful to look at other agencies and see, you know, is what we're doing the norm? Is it outside of the norm? So I reached out to several agencies, and I've got a chart on here. So you can see we're only comparing water in this chart only because the way that sewer is billed and calculated can be so different. We just wanted to keep it consistent. So EID, as you can see, our watered down policy is half the excess from the previous year at a frequency of once every 5 years. Placer County is very similar. They also offer half of the excess, but they base it on a 2-year average, and their frequency is once every 5 years as well. The city of Folsom and the city of Sacramento offer no water leak adjustments at all. The city of Placerville currently has no written policy. Theirs is more of a case-by-case basis. South Tahoe, they also offer half of the excess based on the previous year, similar to us, but their frequency is more frequent. They offer it every 2 years. So they probably have a lot of freezing up there. San Juan Water offers half of the excess based on a 3-year average, and their frequency is once per the lifetime of the owner.
brutal, I mean,
It's a little better than Folsom and Sacramento, but
yeah, no, but I mean, brutal once per
Pretty
lifetime.
strict.
Boy, I'd be
Yeah.
nervous.
yeah.
So you can see I
Yeah.
think we're very accommodating to our customers, not only in sharing the excess water costs, but also trying to educate them and pointing them to the direction of how they can find the leak and go on the web and all that.
Yeah, and I think it's I commend you for using the language of, because it's their league, it's not necessarily EID's responsibility. But for us to help share in this unusual cost, I think is a good way to phrase it. I
Yes.
think most people would get that.
And you mentioned the customer that contacted you concerned about, the irrigation systems beginning to fail. Well, that's kind of the intent here is, wait a minute, if it's starting to fail, and I've had my share of plastic drip fail too, it's like, okay, it's time to replace that stuff. So the once in a 5-year, I think it also encourages customer to fix those things.
Yeah, be on top of it. I also heard from Nevada Irrigation District after this was published. Theirs is pretty similar to ours. They use the excess from the previous year. They actually calculate that excess based on a wholesale rate, and they put a minimum of $200. So if the difference is less than 200, there's no adjustment. If it is, then they'll go ahead and offer that. And they used to be once every 10 years, but they changed it to once every 5. So again, right in line with consistency of other agencies.
There's no frequent flyers at San Juan Water, huh?
No. Okay, and we're at the, so that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Well, I want to thank you. It's a very professional, well-done presentation, a lot of preparation I know goes into it. And I think it's useful for the public, but just as much for us board members to know this, because I think we get these questions and maybe we can help you guys in answering them. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to action items now.
We'll just call
Oh, I'm
for,
sorry. Yeah, public comment.
if there's any members of the public wishing to speak on information item number 9, there is no board action. There's detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak.
Okay. Now we'll move on to action items. Item number 10.
Move one.
Okay. It's been motioned by Director Osborne, seconded by Director Day for, to approve finance item number 10.
Madam Chair, I'll be recusing myself from this item.
Yes. Okay.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 10, option 1, moved by Director Osborne, seconded by Director Day, with Director Veer Camp recusing himself. Now is your time to raise your hand. President Anzini, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay. Board members vote.
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries.
All right, we'll move on to number 11 in the action items, Office of the General Counsel.
Good morning. Good morning, President Anzini and members of the board. Elizabeth Leeper. I'm the Senior Deputy General Counsel for the board, and I will be presenting the on-call contracts for your consideration. And this is the on-call contracts for both professional services as well as general service categories for a 3-year period, 2023 through 2025. So the district does have existing on-call contracts. Those are set to expire at the end of this calendar year. So we've been hard at work seeking proposals for the next 3-year period. And so we ended up actually issuing 3 requests for proposals, and that covered both our on-call professional and general service categories. And as a result of that process, we are recommending award of 76 on-call contracts. And so 70 of those contracts will be for professional services, and the companies that we are seeking to award those to are listed on the notice of intent, which was included in your board packet. And then in addition to those 70 contracts, we have 6 additional contracts for our general on-call services. And so a little bit about the on-call contracts process. This is really a, save money, save time, and be able to quickly expedite for these frequently needed services. So as you can imagine, we have a variety of services that we need on a frequent basis. And so what we can do is we issue a single request for professional services or general services, the RFP process. We do a single RFP that covers a very wide variety of services that we're going to be seeking. And so that saves staff time both in the preparation of that document, so we're not issuing RFPs throughout the year for these ongoing services. And then, of course, as things come up, because we're already in the on-call contract, we're able to quickly mobilize as we need these services. So, as you know, a lot of unplanned things also happened in the district, such as, the Caldor fire recovery, where we need to quickly mobilize cultural services, environmental services. So we have a pre-approved list of consultants and service providers that we can quickly mobilize. We do heavily utilize these on-call contracts. So for example, in 2021 alone, we had 125 distinct tasks that were performed, totaling over 2.8 million. So frequently used throughout the district. These on-call contracts also provide some cost stability for us over the 3-year period. So we do allow for some slight increases in pricing, as you can imagine, particularly in the current market. It's very hard for someone to feel comfortable locking in a 3-year rate, particularly for their own labor and staff costs. So we do allow them to specify increased rates over the 3-year period, but they have to specify those rates now, and then they're effectively locked into the rates that they are specifying. So we get some price stability over that 3-year period in terms of the costs of those services. And then importantly, we're not guaranteeing any particular work for any of these contractors. So what we're really saying is, yes, we think you have the necessary qualifications. Yes, we will turn to you if and when we need these services, but there's no guarantees. So we get to decide when we need the services and who we're going to be utilizing from these on-call contracts. And then, of course, we do solicit proposals from these pre-approved contractors, but at any time we could choose to also issue a separate RFP, say that we felt like we wanted to go back out to the market and just get maybe a broader selection of consultants. So we can do that at any time as well. These are really utilized for our smaller projects. I know some people wouldn't consider 150,000 small, but when you're in our business, that is a fairly small project. So the way we've structured these on-call contracts is we've essentially said no individual task is going to exceed 150,000. So we do want to keep them somewhat small, obviously, because we're not going to go back out to market every time. But importantly, anything that is over 100,000, consistent with our board policies, is going to still come back to the board as an individual approval for your consideration. So still have that $100,000 threshold built in for board consideration of any of those projects. And then if we do anticipate something being over the 150,000, that's when we would actually issue a separate RFP and go back out to the market for those larger projects. And so this gives you a feel for the various types of services that we secure through these on-call contracts. So these are what we call our professional services. As you can see, it's 18 distinct categories of service that have quite a range. Obviously, general engineering, we use quite a bit for some of our smaller design support services. We heavily utilize our environmental permitting. So all of these are kind of frequently utilized services that the district needs, and we have recommended contracts for all of these categories. For the professional on-call services this year, we ended up actually issuing 2 RFPs. The first RFP, we didn't get quite as many proposals as we were expecting, and we got some feedback that there was perhaps some confusion about the types of services we were soliciting. So we wanted to make sure that we got all of the proposals that we could, and so we did do an additional RFP, which was very beneficial because we ultimately ended up with over 100 proposals through that process. And then there is a whole team of district staff that independently score each of these categories. So we develop review teams that have familiarity with that particular service, and then they score each proposal based on the criteria that's specified in the RFP. And then as a result of that process, we are recommending award of 70 on-call contracts to the 18 categories of services listed in the notice of intent. And before I turn it over to my co-presenter, I just wanted to recognize my contracts management staff, Lori Bazinet and Donna Hampton, who are working behind the scenes to make all of this possible. So I wanted to just recognize their efforts as well. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. He is going to talk to you about the general services that he was able to secure.
Good morning, President Anzini, members of the board. I'm Ryan Deacon, senior buyer here at the district, as Elizabeth mentioned. So I oversaw the general on-call services RFP this time around. These are the 5 categories that we were seeking proposals for. And these categories, again, as Elizabeth said, are important to quickly mobilize in a lot of circumstances, and really they're a protection for the district, just in terms of having contractual language in place and having a structured rate that we know we can rely on these contractors to come out and perform services for us is very beneficial. Our scope within purchasing is and the general services categories is smaller than the professional services, but as you can see, we received 10 proposals, and of those 10 proposals, we're recommending award of 6 on-call contracts to the highest scoring companies of the 5 categories of service, as listed in the notice of intent to award. So this is my cameo. I'm very brief, and I'm going to turn it back over to Elizabeth. She can read it.
We're just keeping it dynamic for you. So option 1 for the board's consideration is to award 76 contracts to the 57 companies listed on the notices of intent to award for on-call services from January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2025. And our recommendation is option 1, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Madam Chair, I'll move option 1.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. It's been moved by Director Veerkamp, second by Director Dwyer to approve item number 11.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Or-
Questions?
On the professional services, we listed all of the contractors that we were going to award to. On the general on-call services, who are the 6?
Ryan, for,
Diamond,
I-
Crane, Netto.
I believe it's
Are they on
specified
there?
Yeah.
Oh,
in the
sorry.
board packet.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah, they had all this, it was a spreadsheet,
It's in the packet.
yeah. Any other questions? Anybody from the public?
President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 11, option 1, moved by Director Veerkamp and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay. Board members vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. We'll move to item number 12. More
President
engineering.
Anzini, while Liz is coming up to the microphone, I believe it's page 365 of the board packet. Director Dwyer lists the.
I
Great.
found it. Thank you.
All right. Presentation time.
Alrighty. Good morning, President Anzini, members of the board, members of the public. My name is Liz Carrington, Senior Civil Engineer here at the district. Today I'll be presenting a construction contract and project funding for the 2022 Collection System Rehabilitation Project. Next slide. Previous board actions. November 2021, the board approved the 5-year CIP, which included this project. June of 2020, the board awarded a contract to Express Sewer and Drain for the previous rehabilitation project. Next slide. Summary of issues. This project is part of a larger programmatic CIP. Yes, go ahead. Oh,
Just move the mic, you have a very soft voice.
thank you, Jim. All right, this project is part of a larger programmatic CIP where we like to keep on top of regular rehabilitation and replacement of our collection sewer system. In particular, this project will rehabilitate 16 manholes, install 2 replacement manholes, install 2,300 linear feet of cured-in-place pipe, and install 78 feet of replacement pipe. Next slide, please. All right, background. So the district has the wastewater collection system, which is permitted under the State Water Resources Control Board's general waste discharge requirements. Part of those WDRs, or waste discharge requirements, is that the district develop and implement a sewer system management plan, an SSMP. And this project is a direct outcome of section number 4 of that plan, which is our operations and maintenance program. Part of that program, Tracy's here today, is regular cleaning and inspection of our system, maintaining asset records for our entire system, and then which feeds into a prioritized list of short-term and long-term capital improvement planning. Next slide. All right, that SSMP, it's pretty comprehensive. It covers all of our district collection system assets. This starts from the district's sewer cleanout on private properties, through the lower lateral, through the gravity main, and then in most cases goes to a lift station, force main, and then to our wastewater treatment plants. And then our wastewater treatment plants, they have separate permitting for those facilities. Next slide. All right. The district has about 650 miles of collection system pipeline. About a third of that is our lower laterals. Over half is our gravity mains, and then just a small percentage of force mains. Those force mains, when we find deficiencies, those tend to bubble up into their own projects just due to cost and scope of the repairs that are needed. Through the gravity mains, a lot of the minor deficiencies our crews can address in-house, very short order notice. But if they tend to be a little bit larger, we like to bundle those up into this type of project. Next slide. All right. As far as an overall composition and makeup of our collection system, a good majority of our pipe is PVC, which if installed correctly, that's a 100-year asset. And as we do our regular cleaning and inspection, those seem to be hunky-dory moving forward. Unfortunately, we tend to see issues with our AC pipe, which is asbestos cement pipe, that is susceptible to hydrogen sulfide corrosion. And then we also have the vitrified clay pipe, which that is corrosion resistant, but unfortunately it's a very brittle material. And so as roots start to infiltrate or ground settle, we start to see cracking, and that eventually leads to structural failures and potentially potholes in the roadway. Yes.
The large pipes under the street, you know, they can be, I don't know, 3 feet in diameter, bigger sometimes. What are those typically made of?
So we have spiralite. We also have some concrete pipe in place. We do have some HDPE, which is also a plastic pipe, corrosion resistant. It's just the makeup is a little bit different.
Okay.
So, yep. All right, next slide. All right, when we find deficiencies in our gravity system, a CIPP is a great option that we can look into. Unfortunately, there's a few caveats with that. The diameter, to be cost effective, really needs to be less than or equal to 12 inches. The deficiencies need to be cracking offset joints. I mean, once we have a full collapse, we need to go in and replace that section. Cross-sectional area needs to be mostly circular. If it's ovaled, unfortunately, that liner doesn't provide a structural replacement. And then all manholes need to be accessible, because really that's how we launch the liner, is through those existing manhole structures. Next slide. Alrighty. I wanted to include this little picture because I think it does an excellent job of just highlighting the fact that we are getting a pipe within a pipe. It's the same end result, but minimal surface restoration. Sometimes we'll have to go in and do minor point repairs, but for the most part, we can leave this ground undisturbed, no paving, no landscape restoration. It's pretty much a pipe within a pipe. We do have a slightly less diameter, but we've typically noticed hydraulically, because it's a smooth wall pipe, we don't have any hydraulic impacts because the water can move quicker through that pipe.
Less friction.
Yes, less friction. Yes, next slide. Alrighty, this is the picture of a manhole that we recently rehabilitated through our 2020 contract. Manhole rehabilitation isn't just painting on that liner, it's really removing the old, so like in this project we have T-lock liner, so removing the old lining system, doing prepping the concrete surface, doing patch repairs, replacing the iron, so replacing the frame and cover on top, and then applying this very thick lining system that is actually a manhole inside of a manhole. All right, next slide. All right, so the scope of this particular project, like I stated in the summary, rehabilitation of 16 manholes, replacement of 2 manholes, installation of 2,300 linear feet of cured in place pipe, and installation of 78 feet of replacement pipe. I did want to make 2 special notes on this slide. This work will require night work as well as bypassing. So a handful of the manholes that we've included in this project, they're downstream of the St. Andrews force main, so it's very turbulent flow, very prone to corrosion in that particular area, and it's on Silva Valley Boulevard, which is right next to that trifecta of schools, right in that little area. So to adhere to our El Dorado County Department of Transportation encroachment permit, we are doing all of those rehabilitations at night. And then also the pipeline, in order to maintain our sewer service to our customers, we've given the option to the contractor of going upstream and installing a Vector truck and pumping out those flows, moving it downstream, or going as far as installing a trailer-mounted pump and then above-ground piping. All right, next slide. All right, I included some of these pictures just to kind of give you a glimpse of the inside. Not very pretty. So the picture on the left, that's the inside of one of the manholes on Silva Valley Boulevard. This manhole was originally installed with a liner, knowing that it does have turbulent flow being downstream of a lift station. Unfortunately, what happens over time is those liners, if it's not installed correctly, or if there's little deficiencies, it starts to break off and corrode, and that hydrogen sulfide goes up in between that liner and affects the concrete, and then unfortunately, there's no more manhole. So saw this, definitely wanted to include it in our next round of rehabilitation projects. And then the 2 pictures on the right, the top one is vitrified clay pipe. Offset joint seems pretty innocuous at the surface, but unfortunately, sometimes those offset joints leads to debris being hung up, blockages, and then potential SSOs. So we definitely want to address those. And then the picture on the bottom right, that's asbestos cement pipe, which is subject to hydrogen sulfide corrosion, which we've seen many times at this board. All right, next slide. I did want to mention project benefits. So this is not just a Band-Aid fix. This really does add another 50 years of useful life to our assets. It does reduce I&I, inflow and infiltration. So Tracy and his crews work diligently during our peak weather flows to try to mitigate higher flows or address pump issues. And so this overall reduces that I&I volume. Also, it reduces energy costs associated with pumping and wastewater treatment. Also, it's a root intrusion and reduction, which reduces the possibility of blockages, prevention of structural failures, and the unfortunate situation of sinkholes in public right-of-ways. So we definitely want to get ahead of these failures before they become structural failures. The CIPP, it's minimal ground disturbance, minimal construction duration, which all leads to a lesser construction cost. So it's a better way, a more cost-effective way of addressing our deficiencies in our system. Next slide. Bid process. The project was publicly bid in August of 2022. Mandatory pre-bid meeting was held on September 8th, and then bids were due just recently on September 20th. Right. The pre-bid meeting was attended by 2 contractors. This type of work tends to be a very niche type of work, and so there's just not many folks out in industry that do this work. Luckily, we did receive at least 1 bid, less than the engineer's estimate. And Express Sewer and Drain, they did our previous lining project, and they did an amazing job. Very cost conscious. They looked at some cost savings measures during the project. Also, they worked very well with our constituents that were impacted by the project. Okay. Next slide. Environmental. Staff has determined that this project is categorically exempt from CEQA. Also, if the board decides to approve this project, staff will file a notice of exemption from CEQA with the clerk recorder's office. Next slide. Public outreach. Alrighty, so after today's meeting, if we decide to move forward, initial courtesy notice will be mailed out to all the residents, and then we'll have an additional 48-hour notice. Last time we worked with Express, we worked in conjunction with Express, and so designed our flyers to have our information and as well as Express's information, just so that, if there's any issues, we want to give them, options of how to reach anyone as quickly as possible. All right, funding request. Today we are requesting funds for the construction contract, which is $978,645. additional $50,000 for professional services for waterworks engineers. They were the design engineer on the project and have done an excellent job to date, so we'd like to retain them for review of submittals and RFIs. $75,000 for inspection services, $75,000 for capitalized labor, and contingency of $100,000 for a total funding request of $1,278,645. I did want to note that the funding in the CIP was about $1.5 million, so we are within the funding projected on last year's CIP.
I'll move option one and just say, since I've been on the board, I'm going to sound geeky, but I'm a fan of the modern sewer system. It is an amazing thing. And I know most people don't think about it. I didn't used to. You put something down the garbage disposal or you flush and forget. But it's the way the system is set up and what it does and what it does for us. It's an amazing thing. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. We do it.
I'll second.
Okay. We
And
have,
for the record, Liz was just going to read the option.
all right,
Option one, award a contract to Express Sewer and Drain, Inc. in the not-to-exceed amount of $978,645 for construction of the 2022 Collection System Rehabilitation Project and authorize additional funding of $50,000 for engineering construction support, $75,000 for inspection services, $75,000 for capitalized labor, and $100,000 in contingencies for a total funding request of $1,278,645 for the 2022 Collection System Rehabilitation Project, project number 21018.01.
all right. We have a motion by Director Dwyer, Director Day, and seconded by Director Dwyer. Any public notifications from the public?
I'm certain we have no public comment because we have no more members of the public participating.
Oh, goody.
So I believe we are ready for the vote.
Yeah, this is boredom. All right, so,
Ready for the vote.
ready for the vote.
Director Day? Jim? Stop disturbing him. Director Day, we're ready for your vote. Okay, here we go. Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Just one question. When is this going to start?
Well, we'd like to hit the ground running this year. So
Okay.
if weather holds out, then we'll try to rush through those
Great.
submittals, make sure everything's good to go. The process is actually really quick, and so as long as we have a couple weeks of clear weather, then we can hit
Great.
it this year.
Thank you.
Yep, great, thank you very much.
Okay, item number 13, finance. What say you?
We'd like to usually make him quick. I'll move option one. With a note that the supply chain issue rears its ugly head again.
Yeah,
Second.
well, I guess.
Nice presentation.
Nice, President.
Yeah, I did come with something different.
Yeah, so it's been, all right. There's a motion by Director Veerkamp and seconded by Director Osborne to approve item number 13, and that's expenditure of $218,775 to purchase meters.
And in case.
Discussion.
In case any employees would like to speak, we do. Well, there's no members of the public
Well,
here.
we have an employee right there.
Okay, so in case we have anybody participating that would like to speak on action item number 13. Rachel? No, just, okay, good.
I think, we kind of rushed through, and that's okay. I think that it's really important because the meters generate our revenue. And stuck meters and failed meters are lost money to the district. So I think it's a real important topic, and thank you for staying on top of it and keeping them fixed and keeping the water flowing and the money flowing.
All right.
Sorry, we're stuck, so I'm not sure what the,
Yeah, he's frozen in time.
at least he has a smile on his face, right? That's actually a great picture, Greg.
How does it feel to be stuck in time?
Feels like it.
Quantum leap. All right. Do we have to wait? Yes. Nope.
No,
Okay.
I
Board
think-
members, vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you very much.
So before we move on to review of assignments, I forgot to report one thing. As a board member for the Mountain County Water Association, there is a special workshop in Murphy's, and it's also shared with the Aqua Region 3 on October 20th and the 21st. So any board member wants to join me, I'm planning on going down, coming back that same day. But maybe our general manager can add more to that.
Just Dan Corcoran, I think, is a presenter in there, and
Yeah.
I'll be joining that
And
group
it's
as
about
well.
wildfires, all right, and water. So a really good, important topic, and it's be great that Dan's going to be there. So now review of assignments.
Yes, if there's any questions regarding the tentative items, please let me know. We do have a couple, I think, directions to staff.
Oh, we're speeding up now.
We,
No? Just
yeah, we
follow-
have
Marching time.
direction to staff, but
We
no
are
review
making
assignment.
up time for the time that was frozen.
We've never been that busy. I do have a question. Just if somebody would email me, Brian, or the current policy on off-site meters. Because I was approached yesterday by a person that wanted to know, and they're obviously going to be an off-site meter.
I
Okay.
believe it's, the policy, like under our administrative regulations and board policies, is on the website, but I can extract that. That's all you want, is just the policy?
Do you mean like a temporary meter, like on a, no?
Brian,
Your neck of the woods doesn't have
No.
okay, somebody, Brian Mueller's saying yes, so
Okay.
I will ask that Brian Mueller accomplish or assign someone that.
All right. All right. Any other things? Move for adjournment.
At 10:38.
Thank you for participating. I'm out of here.